I'm joined now by our own Dr. Joe Sirven of the Saturday WJCT program. What's health got to do with it? He visits us every month for a house call to talk medical news, take your calls and questions. You can reach us at 904-549-2937, or you can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, Ann, it's so good to be here this morning.
It's great to have you as ever. I want to start with an issue that is both a public health issue and a political one. The issue of marijuana. It is an amendment that's going to be voted on November 5th here, whether it should be recreationally legalized. But there has been some new reporting about the evidence of danger from increasingly potent cannabis.
Yeah, this is one that if you give a moment, I want to just kind of lay out the nuance to this. So when you think of cannabis or the marijuana plant, most people when they hear that they think it's just one thing. The plant has like 400 different compounds, of which two are really, really important to talk about. One is CBD. I'm an advocate. It's helped patients with epilepsy. I know it helps a lot of people. And that's not the centerpiece of concern at this moment with that. THC, the thing that gives you the high, that is the bigger concern. The reason is the way that we think of it when everyone smiles when they think of THC, you think of those movies and things of that sort. At the time those things came out, when once upon a time, the amount of THC that people would get when they smoked was a kind of a relatively small amount. But now in places that have gone recreational and all of the open shops and everything, the potency of what you can find with THC is so high that none of us knows how that affects people. And now we're seeing the medical negative effects to that. So this is a story about THC and a story about CBD. Really, the concern is the THC is just the potency is like increased almost 100-fold since people would think in college or something along those lines. You're getting something that is, to be honest with you, almost a whole lot different.
Just anecdotally, I remember Dave Chappelle, the comedian,
Yes.
did a bit where he was talking about, getting high with somebody before the show. And of course, he's like a lifelong pothead,
Correct.
very open about it. But he said he got on stage and he just couldn't even perform. He was that intoxicated. So it is a different scale in terms of the intensity, but it's also causing some medical problems for people who are using it.
That's right. There is a syndrome that, and I'll walk into this from a place of humility that I am now just learning about, called hyperemesis cannabinoid syndrome, which is basically this syndrome where people who have using this high, we assume a high potency form of THC fairly consistently, day in, day out, constantly, and it gets to a place where they start vomiting like almost in a protracted way, 4 to 5 times an hour. The only way that they find relief in this very unusual element is by going to hot places. They take endless hot showers to find relief from this nausea, and it gives them that relief until the point that until they smoke again, and it kind of keeps going, or whatever way they ingest it, and it keeps going on and on. This is a new thing because from a medical standpoint, people use THC from a medical perspective for bad nausea. This is the complete opposite, and I could get into the science for an hour on this, but it has to do with the receptors in your gut that overreact to this, not to the THC coming through, while the receptors that you have for this in the brain are overridden for it.
And so this has not been really very well tracked. Apparently, a lot of these symptoms aren't necessarily attributed to that. And there may not be any, necessarily like good gathering of that information, but there has been reporting on it, not just for the vomiting, but also for things like psychosis and paranoia and problems that doctors are seeing, and even though they may not be tracking them properly.
One of the things we did know about THC before all of this high potency is that there is a subset of people who, when they do THC, it can bring out, for those who are susceptible, kind of the psychotic behavior. And if you're susceptible to something like schizophrenia, this just moves you forward. Now, that was on the doses that we knew about. Now with highly super potent THC, we find those numbers increasing as well. And that's an issue because we don't have our arms around this. Remember, it's illegal federally. So research on these topics isn't even done. We are literally kind of by the seat of our pants on this one.
And there have been a lot of, studies recently that have shown people, particularly in the 18 to 25-year-old group, that are using it with a definition that meets a substance use disorder, that they found almost everybody, 81% of those users meet the criteria for a substance use disorder, and about 3 million are addicted. And people have always said, you can't get addicted to marijuana.
That was our understanding of the traditional forms of, again, THC, the lower potency form. You probably aren't going to be addicted to it. But when we are dealing with compounds that are like so purified to levels that none of us know what that's like, this changes the equation. And yes, addiction can occur with these higher forms because we just don't know.
Yeah. We have a question from Susan on Facebook. She says, wouldn't legalizing THC make it more consistent than now? And I guess, Dr. Joe, like a lot with this amendment, a lot of it depends on how it's implemented by the legislature, how those laws are written, if it does succeed.
Yeah, that's a great question from Facebook. So one of the things is that we definitely need to get to a place where it's legalized to at least do the research, to at least like we can answer these questions. We need to kind of fix that part. So on the federal level, I think that that's the right thing to do. Now, how it's written about recreational and medical, that's a different animal. And again, we need, I think one thing, if I had to say anything without lecturing anything, we have to kind of get into the weeds here and say, are we talking CBD? Are we talking THC? We have to name the chemical because there's so many components of what we call marijuana that there are a lot of unintended consequences down the road. And then you're at a hospital, the ER doctors doesn't know what to do with this. We don't know how to manage it. And you're just sad.
I just want to shift gears a little bit and talk about this report that came out that is linking early puberty to certain chemicals, a specific perfume, really. It's that is found in soaps and fragrances. This is a new study from the National Institutes of Health.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, and it kind of goes back into this, and we've talked about some of this about precocious puberty. That's when you like have the in girls onset of periods early, boys onset of adolescence a little earlier, and it's believed that some environmental toxins can trigger receptors in the area that is responsible for this. And this study actually was done looking at human cells and as well as other animal cells, but it wasn't in like it was in a lab. It was not in a people. So this I think it's a little early. We do know precocious puberty is a real thing, and this is another sign of, my goodness, we have to answer this question a little faster than we're going right now.
We've got a call from Kelly in Arlington. Good morning, Kelly. Just briefly, if you can.
Yes, I just have a quick clarifying question on the definition of high potency THC. And is it not, like numbers wise, and is it not what we're finding in medical dispensaries? Thank you.
So with regards to the source of where this comes from, the studies that have come out on this particular syndrome, it seems to be agnostic to wherever the source is. Again, it is more related to THC and THC potency, whether you get it at a dispensary. But remember, there's a lot of dispensaries out there, and you can get a lot of different potency elements of THC at these locations. So I will just say, it's not the most common thing, but suddenly something that was almost never heard of is showing up in ERs. And if you go to places such as Colorado, Oregon, and other locations that have had this for a while, this has been an issue. And it's, again, high potency THC is what we're talking about.
So this is a medical perspective. We're going to be talking about Amendment 3 in much more detail on this program and kind of examining the politics as well. But Dr. Joe, thank you so much for being here today. He hosts What's Health Got to Do with It every Saturday at 4. Give it a listen. It is a terrific program, and we love having him here. Thanks, Joe.
And always a pleasure.